I tried to straighten out my gay best friend because I thought he was a waste, but he reported me to my husband. Now I'm facing divorce, a report, and everyone's hatred. First of all, this is a disposable account because there are always dramatic people who exaggerate the situation. My best friend has reported me, and honestly, I still can't believe things have reached this point. It seems like an excess to me, unnecessary drama that doesn't deserve all this attention. For me, it was just a misunderstanding. I'm married for several years. I'm not one of those people who have many friends. It's always been hard for me to socialize. In my work, I usually keep a low profile. I fulfill my duties and return home. That's why when I met Mariano, I thought I had found someone with whom I could speak freely without there being any kind of weird tension or misunderstandings. He is gay, he said it from the first moment, and that made things much easier for me. There was no risk of him trying to flirt with me, nor did I have to watch out for anyone suspecting anything. Everything seemed clean and simple. I liked him immediately. He's fun, has good taste in clothes, and is always up to date on series or movies that I also like. Little by little, we became friends. We started going out for lunch at the office, sharing jokes, and I even invited him to my house a couple of times. My husband also met him and had no problem. Mariano even told me he found him handsome, but he said it jokingly, without jealousy. We laughed about that. I myself recognize that Mariano is attractive, has a charming smile, is charismatic, and it shows he takes good care of his appearance. But from my point of view, it's a waste for someone like that to close himself off to the experience of being with a woman. It sounds ugly, I know, but I really thought that deep down he was missing out on trying what it's like to be with someone like me. Sometimes I feel that gays simply haven't met the right woman, and that with the right person they could realize what they're missing. I know many will find it a ridiculous idea, but I saw it as a favor, almost as if I were offering him an opportunity to live something different, something that could open his eyes. In my head, it wasn't something harmful, but on the contrary, a kind of help. One day, while we were talking, I dared to suggest it directly. I asked him if he had ever considered being with a woman just to experiment. I even encouraged him to have a casual encounter between us. He laughed nervously and told me no, that he wasn't interested in women, that he had no doubts about what he liked, and that my idea was crazy. I felt rejected. I let it go at that moment. I wasn't going to pressure him, at least not head-on. But the idea kept going around inside me. I felt pity, as if poor Mariano was really missing out on something big. And I was also somewhat curious, what would happen if I managed to make him see me in another way? I didn't comment on it to anyone else. Of course, my husband had to travel to a work congress and would be away for 3 days. That gave me a freedom I rarely have. He told me not to worry, to stay calm, and I smiled thinking about the opportunity. During those days I invited Mariano over several times. We watched movies, cooked, laughed, had a blast. Really, I liked having him close. It was like having company without commitments until the last day arrived. That night, I bought several bottles of wine and some beers. The idea was to have a relaxed, fun evening where things would flow. When Mariano arrived, I offered him a drink, but he told me he didn't feel like drinking. He insisted he wasn't in the mood, that he preferred something quiet. I insisted gently at first, but then more firmly. I told him not to be boring, that it was just a little wine to accompany dinner. I ended up serving him anyway, and between chat and chat, I got him to drink. At the beginning, he barely touched the glass, but I took care of filling it again every time he left it on the table. Little by little, he started to loosen up, to talk more, to laugh louder. I feigned naturalness, as if we were just sharing, but inside I thought, it's the perfect moment to show him what he's missing. When he was clearly dizzy, I got closer than normal. I touched his arm, then his leg, making playful comments. He pushed my hand away, laughed uncomfortably, and told me no, stop, don't do silly things. But I interpreted it as shyness. I thought that deep down he liked it and just needed a push. At one point he tried to stand up to leave, but I stopped him, telling him it was late, that he was drunk, that he couldn't drive like that. I convinced him to stay on the sofa. I sat next to him, hugged him, and started kissing him. He tried to turn his face to reject me, but I insisted. I told him things like, "Relax, let yourself go, you'll see it's not that bad." In the end, I succeeded. We were together that night. I felt it as a triumph, as if I had finally shown him what a woman can give him. For me, it wasn't anything terrible. On the contrary, I saw it as a moment of intimacy that he, deep down, would end up thanking. But the next morning was very different. He woke me up early, agitated, with an angry face. He asked me what the hell I had done, why I had forced him. He was upset, as if something terrible had happened to him. I, still half asleep, replied not to exaggerate, that it had only been a favor, an experiment. I told him there was no need to dramatize, that in the end it wasn't a big deal. Mariano looked at me with very wide eyes, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I assured him everything would be fine, that if he had liked it we could repeat it. I thought that with time he would realize I was right, but he got up suddenly, got dressed in a hurry, and ran out of the house. I stayed in shock. I didn't understand how he could react like that. After all, he was a man, and in my mind that meant he shouldn't get so sensitive. I was convinced he was exaggerating, that soon he would talk to me again and realize it wasn't so serious. The next day I got up as if nothing had happened. I prepared coffee, got dressed for work, and went out like every day. Inside, I was a little curious about how Mariano would react, but I honestly thought he would get over it quickly. He had always been sensitive, dramatic. I imagined that after sleeping well and calming down, he would laugh about the matter again. However, when I arrived at the office, his desk was empty. Nobody knew anything about him. It caught my attention, yes, but I didn't take it seriously. I thought he had taken the day off because he was still confused about what had happened. I smiled to myself, convinced he would write to me soon. I finished the day without receiving a single message from him. That bothered me a little, although I tried to convince myself it wasn't important. He'll show up, and when he does, surely he's going to realize it wasn't that bad, I repeated to myself. That afternoon, upon arriving home, everything changed. I opened the door and the first thing I saw left me frozen. Mariano was sitting in the living room in front of my husband. The two were speaking in a low voice, but the most shocking thing was seeing Mariano crying. He had red eyes, trembling hands, and seemed completely destroyed. My first reaction was to let out a sarcastic laugh. I told my husband that apparently Mariano wanted to take advantage of him. Now, I said it jokingly. Of course, because my husband is heterosexual. He would never look at a man. The scene seemed absurd to me, like a parody, but my husband's expression didn't make me laugh. As soon as he saw me, he shot me a look of hatred, one of those that burn. His lips were tight, his jaw rigid, and he got up immediately. It wasn't the face of the patient and quiet man I knew, it was a face transformed by rage. Before I could open my mouth to say something else, I went ahead and blurted out with disdain, "Don't take it so personally. He's gay, remember?" I thought that with that he would calm down, that he would understand it was all a misunderstanding and nothing more. But what I received was an outburst. My husband shouted at me with a deep and firm voice that rumbled in the living room, "Shut up now. You have no idea how disgusted I am to listen to you. What you did is unforgivable. You drugged him, got him drunk, whatever, you forced him. Do you know what that's called? Abuse." I froze. I tried to laugh again to take weight off the matter, but it didn't work. He wasn't playing along. He took a step closer and pointed to the door with a firm finger. "Right now we're going to the police. The three of us. And if you dare to refuse, I swear I'll take care of everyone knowing what you did myself." It surprised me. I had never seen him speak like that, so hard, so determined. I had always considered him a quiet man, even too quiet. That he now faced me with that firmness scared me a little. I answered him with a mocking tone, "The police? Don't be ridiculous. I'm your wife." He's a confused friend. Nobody is going to believe a woman can rape a man. They're going to laugh in his face. But my husband didn't let himself be manipulated. He shot me another look and snapped, "Shut your mouth and come with us. I'm not asking you, I'm ordering you." That phrase hit me. I wasn't used to him talking to me without authority. I felt a shiver run down my back. Mariano could barely speak between sobs, but he nodded. He looked at me with a mix of fear and repulsion, as if I were a monster. That bothered me even more. How could he exaggerate so much? We got into the car, and during the whole journey I kept silent, although inside I was laughing. I was convinced nothing would happen. They could make all the drama they wanted, but at the station nobody was going to take seriously a man crying because a woman had been with him. And effectively, it was more or less like that. Upon arriving, Mariano began to recount what happened. He was trembling, speaking brokenly, but repeated again and again that I had forced him, that I insisted even though he said no, that I got him drunk on purpose. My husband supported him, nodding, reinforcing his words. The police officers who attended us listened, yes, but it showed in their faces they didn't give it much importance. One of them even looked sideways at his partner as if holding back laughter. When it was my turn to speak, I put on my best face of disbelief. I told them everything had been consensual, that Mariano was inventing it because he was ashamed. I added he had always been insecure with his sexuality and now sought to blame me for his confusion. The agents started asking vague questions without going too deep. One of them said something like, well, but if you were drinking, maybe he doesn't remember well. Another asked if there were physical proofs, marks, something to support it. Mariano denied, said no, there were no blows, simply that I had pushed him to something he didn't want. I took advantage of that weakness to insist everything was a misunderstanding. After a while, they told us they were going to take a formal statement, but the attitude was clear. They doubted, gave it little importance. While Mariano cried and clung to my husband, I thought, how ridiculous, making a scandal over something he surely enjoyed deep down, and all because he can't accept he liked it. We left the station with a report paper, but without any gesture of urgency from the police. My husband was serious, silent, without looking at me. Mariano kept trembling. I, on the other hand, was calm. For me it was clear everything had ended there. When we returned from the station, I walked behind my husband, thinking in a couple of days Mariano would calm down and everything would return to normal. But as soon as I put a foot in the door, my husband turned and blocked my way. He had an icy look, hard as I had never seen. With a firm voice he told me, "This is no longer your house, we're getting divorced." And without giving me time to react, he closed the door in my face. I froze. I knocked several times, demanding he let me enter at least for my things. A few minutes passed and finally he came out, but not to talk to me. He came out with my belongings in bags and threw them on the ground in front of me as if they were trash. "There's your stuff. Don't come back," he said and closed the door again. That was the first time I felt things might not be under my control. I left dragging the bags, feeling humiliated, not knowing what to do. I ended up calling a friend to let me stay in her apartment for a few days. I thought it would be something temporary, that soon the waters would calm, but no. What came next was a storm I never imagined. Mariano, far from staying quiet, started a campaign against me. He posted on social networks what had happened, shared messages, and even details of our friendship to show I had planned everything. At first I laughed, convinced people weren't going to believe him. Who's going to think a woman can rape a man? I repeated to myself, but I was wrong. People took his side. Mutual friends started to stop talking to me. Coworkers looked at me with contempt. My own boss called me to his office to tell me while there was an ongoing complaint it was better I took indefinite leave. In other words, I was fired without them saying it directly. I felt the world coming down on me. I had only wanted to do him a favor, open his eyes, show him what he was missing, and he, instead of thinking, destroyed my life. He didn't want to admit deep down he liked it, that he enjoyed it, even if now he didn't recognize it. He was in that denial phase and on top dragged everyone with me. My husband took advantage of every detail as proof of my immoral and abusive conduct. His lawyer presented Mariano's testimony, the posts on networks, everything as evidence to accelerate the divorce. The judge painted me as a danger, someone incapable of respecting limits. Justice moved slow, yes, but the true punishment didn't come from the courts, but from people. Mariano and my husband decided to expose me publicly, and that was the final stab. Suddenly my name appeared everywhere. Messages in work WhatsApp groups, comments on Facebook, posts on Twitter. People who never knew me spoke of me as if they knew everything, as if they were judges of my life. They called me abuser, manipulator, sick. That friend who received me at first started getting uncomfortable with my presence. She said her neighbors whispered, that her family asked if she wasn't afraid to house me, until one day, with a forced apology, she asked me to look for another place. Nobody wanted to deal with me. Nobody. I tried to look for work elsewhere, but the same thing always happened. At first it seemed to go well, until someone recognized my face or my name, and everything fell apart. "We're sorry, but we've decided to go with another candidate," they told me with a fake smile. It was obvious I was already marked. Meanwhile, Mariano continued with his campaign. He spoke in LGBT groups, support organizations, forums. He turned me into an example of what can happen even when the aggressor is a woman. And people hugged him, applauded him. I remained like a monster, like someone irredeemable. I couldn't believe what was happening. All for one night, for a misunderstanding, for a gesture that in my head was a favor. I was forced to sell some things cheaply to survive. The divorce left me practically on the street because my husband managed to keep almost everything. The judge considered my acts sufficient proof of my lack of morals and denied me any possibility of compensation. The few friends I had left moved away one by one. Some blocked me without saying anything. Others wrote me short messages saying they couldn't support me, that what I had done was indefensible. I became a social ghost, and the hardest part was realizing nothing I said worked. Every time I tried to defend myself, people took it as one more excuse, as a sign I didn't accept my guilt. Saying Mariano was in denial, that deep down he had liked it, only sank me more. Nobody wanted to listen to me. I repeated to myself it wasn't fair. How was it possible they now put me in the villain's place? But the truth is I no longer had an escape. My name was stained, my reputation destroyed, my life torn to pieces, and all because I believed I was doing a favor. Update 1. It's good this is a disposable account. I opened it only to tell my story and receive at least a little support. I thought here there would be people who would try to understand my version, that not everyone would turn against me. I was wrong. I received more hate than I expected. The comments, private messages, replies on other networks, everything was like a snowball that grew and grew until crushing me. If I told my story here, it was because I believed someone would tell me it was a mistake, but you can get ahead. Instead, they've called me everything. Abuser, homophobic. And those words hurt me because I don't consider myself like that. Really, I didn't do it out of hate. I didn't want to damage him. I saw it as a favor, as a way to help. I always believed Mariano was wrong, that he needed to try what it was like to be with a woman to realize what he was missing. Yes, it sounds horrible written like that, but in my head it wasn't an act of evil. It was a clumsy, wrong gesture, but not an aggression. The wish of many came true. I'm on the floor now. I don't know how I'll get out of this. After all the social pressure, the complaints, and public exposure, justice finally listed me on the list of aggressors. That was the hardest blow. That list is a mark I can't escape from. Although the judicial process was long and strange, although there were no physical proofs or direct witnesses, the accumulation of testimonies, messages, and the context were enough to declare me guilty of sexual abuse. The ruling isn't like in the movies where they take you away handcuffed immediately. In my case, they imposed a suspended sentence, 3 years of suspended prison plus mandatory community work and the obligation to sign up for awareness workshops on sexual diversity respect. Also, as part of the ruling, I was registered in the sex offender registry. That means every time I look for work in certain areas, every time I need a background certificate, that data will appear. It's a permanent signal. I don't know if people understand what that means. It's no longer just the shaming on social networks. It's no longer just the rejection of the neighborhood. It's a legal stamp that says you are forever. Although there were no physical proofs, the court considered sufficient the messages I myself sent to Mariano after the night at my house. Messages in which I told him, "Did you like it, or can we repeat it?" That, added to my husband's statement and Mariano's coherent story, was enough. Now I live with that burden. Many call me homophobic and I keep denying it. I don't feel hate for gay people. It wasn't that. But nobody wants to listen to me anymore. For everyone, I'm the woman who manipulated, got drunk, and abused her gay friend because she didn't accept his orientation. That's the narrative that remained. I lost everything. Even my parents are ashamed of me. When the scandal started, they called to ask me for explanations, and I tried to justify myself as I could. At first, they tried to understand me, but when the sentence came out, they changed their attitude. They told me they couldn't have me in their house because the neighbors whisper, because they feel pointed at, that they need to protect their grandchildren, that they can't allow a registered person to live under their roof. They told me like that, with those cold words. My savings went to lawyers and paperwork. Every door I knock closes. Every job application ends in silence, and every time I check my phone, there's a new message insulting me, reminding me that for people I'm not a person but a monster. Honestly, I don't know what will become of my future. I write this not to ask for pity, but because I need to understand how I got here. A few months ago, I felt like the owner of my life, with a stable marriage, a secure job, and a friend who made me laugh. Today I'm alone, marked and hated. Everyone says I must assume my guilt, that I must accept that what I did was abuse. But in my head there's still a part that asks, was it really that serious? Do I really deserve to lose everything for one night?